Of course, there is a possibility of using those nuclear weapons, and we know that Putin is a bit insane, but at the same point, it won't make situation better for him. It won't bring him any benefits, except for making things worse. Uh, because we all know that NATO will definitely respond to that, and we were told by NATO representatives as well as representatives of the US that there will be a very fast and painful answer to those actions.
Sarsky, you are one of the biggest names in Ukraine war updates coming from inside Ukraine at the moment. Just wondering, are you following events in London this week?
Not really. I mean, here in Ukraine, we try to stay neutral to those things, to political things that happen in other countries, unless you guys require our help somehow. But we believe that British people are confident enough and have much more skills in dealing with those things. So unless you don't require our help, it's okay. We trust you.
Because Boris Johnson was obviously a huge friend to the Ukrainian people and to President Zelensky. But as we sort of cycle through a change of government here so quickly, do the people of Ukraine still feel a close bond to the British people? Do they feel supported?
100%. I can tell you that Ukrainian people feel the support. We all appreciate it, and we believe that no matter what happens with all the politics, but we still feel the support because Ukraine is supported by all the decent people around the world, and regardless of politicians and rulers, we even have supportive people in such countries as Iran, for example. So it doesn't matter, regardless of rulers, chiefs, presidents, governments. We know that we still receive the support from the people, and that's important.
Brilliant. And this week, obviously, we've seen a sort of something of a change in tactics from Putin's side with the use of kamikaze drones. Do you feel that this is an act of desperation on the part of the Russian forces?
Sure, it clearly indicates the desperation they feel at this moment because they're losing two Ukrainian troops. Their mobilization, this announcement of this martial law in Russia, all this indicates their desperation, basically. They understand that they cannot win this war. At the same time, Putin doesn't know how to finish this war because a lot of his allies, even there in Russia, are not satisfied with how it goes. People are not satisfied as well, and he cannot brainwash people long enough before things start changing there in the society.
So, if Putin doesn't know how to finish the war, do you think Ukraine does have a clear vision for how this conflict ends?
Nobody has a clear vision, and nobody ever had, but we still keep fighting because there's no other way for us. We have to win, and we are convinced that we will win. One of the reasons is that Russia is one of the most isolated countries nowadays in the world, with the biggest amount of sanctions placed on it in the world. And because Ukraine has this support of the whole world, we're sure that we're going to win. Russia has absolutely no resources and absolutely no opportunity to win against the whole world that supports Ukraine.
Brilliant. This week there's been serious concerns about plans for the use of deployment of nuclear weapons at some point, either in Ukraine or in the Black Sea.
Of course, there is a possibility of using those nuclear weapons, and we know that Putin is a bit insane, But at the same point, it won't make situation better for him. It won't bring him any benefits except for making things worse. Uh, because we all know that NATO will definitely respond to that, and we were told by NATO representatives as well as representatives of the US that there will be a very fast and painful answer to those actions if Russia decides to do that. On the other hand, again, we have to know how to read Russian propaganda properly, because it's like you always have to consider the opposite of what they're saying. So they were screaming in January, they were screaming in all their media that they were not gonna attack Ukraine, and then they invaded, and now they're screaming that they will definitely use those nuclear weapons to kill everybody. So probably it's they're just trying to spook the people out there, and I'm sure that it's not gonna work.
And so when you say they're trying to spook people, I think in some areas in the West, I think they're somewhat successful. And there are people who say, oh, well, now it's time to hold peace talks, though it's not clear who would even be party to those peace talks. How do you feel about people calling for peace between Russia and Ukraine?
They must understand that there could be no compromise between people who want to leave and people who want to kill them. What kinds of peace talks are we talking about here? And they should also understand that at this point, Ukraine is the country that protects them from Russian terrorism. And if Ukraine is defeated, they will be next. Their home will be next. And Russia is not gonna hesitate about moving deeper into Europe and invading other countries. And there were talks about Russian lands that they want to return back, including Alaska, by the way, because they still consider Alaska as their part of their territory that was stolen from them by evil Americans. So we should not have illusions about terrorists, about having peace talks with terrorists. We have to eliminate this threat. And currently, Ukraine is the only country that is physically fighting against this terrorism. So we require support of the whole world, and we will do our job.
I presume then, by extension, you wouldn't support any resolution that involved allowing Russia to keep any of the areas it's occupied since 2014.
Of course, because we're not talking about those areas. They are not Russia's main goal. Russia has never targeted Donbass specifically as their main military goal. They want to occupy whole Ukraine. They want to change government. They want to kill plenty of people, as they usually do, and then they want to move on next westwards.
After the successful destruction of the bridge, do you think that was a huge morale boost for Ukrainian forces, and do you think that's held up?
On one hand, yes. On the other hand, again, the reasons why that bridge collapsed are still unclear, and we also that those evidence given by Russians that apparently some Ukrainian, I don't know, saboteur arrived with his truck, and he had that Ukrainian ID. No people in Crimea use Ukrainian IDs, and that ID was obviously photoshopped using that picture downloaded from Ukrainian Wikipedia, and the truck was moving from territory of Russia towards Crimea. So there are very, very big amount of questions that still require answering. I'm not sure that we would do this the way it happened, but we will see.
But regardless of who carried out the operation on that bridge, it did momentarily give a lot of momentum to Ukrainian forces.
Yes, we cannot deny that. But on the other hand, again, the automobile part of this bridge that collapsed is not as important as their railway, because all of Russian logistics are built around their railway that comes from Russia and through this Kerch bridge and into Crimea. And that part of the bridge is not completely demolished. So this very part was most crucial for Russians.
Interesting. This week we have seen obviously Iran and sort of smaller nations providing weapons to Putin. How do you feel long term after this conflict has been resolved in some way? How do you think nations should be dealt with who provided weapons that killed Ukrainian citizens?
Definitely, they will be held responsible for that. I'm sure, 100%. All of those criminals, or all of those people who supported criminals, supported those terrorist attacks on Ukrainian cities, they will be punished for that.
And also, we've seen this week nearby Israel are sort of undecided on whether they should provide high-tech equipment to Ukraine to help in your struggle against Russia. Do you think the West is doing enough to put pressure on to get the weapons that you need?
We require much more, because, again, even if we're talking about Budapest Memorandum that guaranteed security to Ukraine, what happens today in Ukraine is anything but security, in my personal opinion. So we require much more than that to make sure that our people are safe, that they are protected against airstrikes. Also, as for Israel, they also must understand that by helping Russia in their invasion against Ukraine, Iran receives benefits, they receive revenue, they receive money, they receive technologies that will also threaten Israeli people and will be used against Israel in the future. That's why we can say that what their minister said about support of Ukraine is based on logic, right?
And finally, can you give us an update on how the Ukrainian people are getting through the attacks on your infrastructure, so power outages, deliberate targeting of your energy infrastructure?
I can only say one thing, that such attacks against civilians never worked in the past 100 years. The only thing Putin does is he makes Ukrainian people more united, more dedicated to fight against Russian aggression. So it won't help him. It will only make things worse for Russia, that will eventually have to pay reparations to Ukrainians and pay its resources for us to be able to rebuild Ukraine. So it only makes things worse for them.